If you've been scrolling through endless specs and still feel unsure which gaming laptop actually makes sense, this review should clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks testing the HP Elite 17.3 with its AMD 6-core CPU, 64GB of RAM and a massive 2.5TB storage combo, trying to answer the same questions you probably have. Will it stay cool during long sessions? Does the keyboard survive marathon raids? And is the price justified when you could just as easily build a desktop? Let's start with the core dilemma most gamers face: performance versus portability. The Elite's 17.3-inch screen gives you a comfortable canvas for both immersive AAA titles and the occasional productivity sprint. In practice, the Full HD panel delivers decent color accuracy for most games, though it's not a factory-calibrated display you'd find on a dedicated creator laptop. What matters more for gamers is how the screen handles motion. I noticed a modest amount of ghosting during fast-paced shooters, but it never became a showstopper, especially when you crank the graphics settings to a level the laptop can sustain without dipping below 30 frames per second. Heat is the real litmus test for any machine that promises sustained performance, and the Elite does a respectable job. Under a continuous load in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the CPU and GPU stayed around the mid-70 SC for the first hour, then crept up to low 80s as the fans hit full speed. The fan noise is audible, a low hum that ramps up noticeably when you push the hardware, but it never turns into a whine that drowns out game audio or your headset mic. If you're planning to game in a quiet bedroom, you might want to keep the volume a touch higher or use noise-canceling headphones, but the sound level is comparable to other high-end 17-inch laptops. Keyboard feel is another make-or-break factor for long raids. The Elite's island-style keys have a solid travel distance and a satisfying click, which feels more like a mechanical board than the mushy chiclet keyboards you sometimes see on thinner gaming notebooks. The backlighting is a simple single-zone white, not a rainbow of zones, but it's bright enough for late-night sessions. My only gripe is the lack of a dedicated macro row. You'll have to rely on software to bind extra commands, which can feel a bit clunky if you're used to having extra physical keys. Battery life is where the trade-offs become obvious. With the 6-core AMD processor and the sizable SSD, the 17-inch chassis houses a 70Wh cell that gives you roughly 5 hours of mixed usage, some streaming, a bit of light gaming, and a lot of web browsing. Push the laptop into a full-blast gaming mode, and you're looking at an hour and a half before you need to plug back in. If you expected a portable gaming rig that can survive a full day of esports without a charger, this isn't it. However, the inclusion of a 2TB SSD plus a 512GB external storage option means you won't be scrambling for external drives, and the long battery life is sufficient for travel days when you're mostly working or watching movies between matches. Now, let's talk about the storage layout because it's a standout practical detail. The internal 2TB SSD provides lightning-fast load times, and the separate 512GB external SSD, essentially a pre-attached drive, gives you a convenient space to stash large game libraries or media without sacrificing internal speed. In real-world terms, I could install Cyberpunk 2077 and Red Dead Redemption 2 side by side, and both launched in under 10 seconds. That kind of convenience is rare in a laptop of this size and price point. Speaking of price, the Elite sits in the mid-$2,000 range. Compared to building a desktop with a comparable AMD Ryzen 7 processor, 64GB of RAM and a 2TB NVMe drive, you'd probably spend a bit less on the components alone, but you'd lose the portability and the convenience of a single, ready-to-go machine. If you already own a decent monitor, keyboard and mouse, a desktop might stretch your dollar further. If you need a machine that you can pull out of a bag at a LAN party, or you travel between work and home and still want to game on the same hardware, the Elite's all-in-one package starts to make sense. Who should buy this? First, gamers who value a larger screen without wanting to lug a separate monitor around. Second, power users who need that massive 64GB of RAM for tasks like video editing, 3D rendering, or running multiple VMs alongside gaming. Third, Anyone who appreciates the peace of mind that comes with a year of Microsoft Office pre-installed useful if you also do a lot of document work on the same device. Who should skip it? If you're a hardcore esports competitor who demands ultra-low latency, a higher refresh rate panel, and a laptop that can run on battery for several hours of intense play, you'll be better off with a 144Hz or 240Hz model that sacrifices some storage for speed. Also, if you're a budget-conscious gamer who's comfortable buying a separate monitor,